Welcome everybody to episode 95 of Door Tunes. So obviously I'm your host, Pete, and this week we have a fantastic guest. The stars are finally aligned. We've been trying to do this for quite some time. I'll get them to introduce themselves.
Yeah, hi, I'm Petri Alanko. I'm composer and sound designer and producer every now and then. So those are my hobbies, basically.
So, Petri, thank you again for being part of the show. It's a real honor to have you on. We've got a lot to talk about, really.
Oh, shit.
No, nice things. One of the things I was going to start with, and I usually bring this up at the beginning for everyone, is how did you get to where you are at the moment? Like, did you, like, everybody has a different way that they've done it. So some people might have done it like they've gone to college, university, and studied music there, or
Yeah, well, I started the usual way, which means that my grandmother took me to a friend of hers, and she basically dragged me there without me actually wanting to go there. And since they have a lot of business in the kitchen and so forth, they decided maybe it's good for me to be where I am in the living room. And they put on a record, which happened to be some arias from operas sung by Madame Callas, Maria Callas. And there was a high-pitched section where she basically sang one note and then started descending down. And there was a piano in the living room. So I started banging the note. She kept singing, and I hit the right note. And when she descended, I hit the right note, and so forth. And then the friend of my grandmother's came out of the kitchen and looked at me quite curiously and told my grandmother, I think your grandson needs some special attention, which of course meant to my grandmother that I was some kind of but luckily she explained what was going on, and soon after that I found myself from having my first piano lesson. Basically I was 5, I guess.
Oh wow.
And my youth was and preteen years basically were more or less colored and flavored by music. I was studying in a conservatoire in Lahti, Finland, and went there 3 to 4 times a week. And of course, I had to do my school chores as well. So I was mostly running around the city and traveling with bus, and also the school in which I went was so-called music-heavy school. So we had basically 2 or 3 times the music lessons normal school would have.
Okay.
So it was always the very integral part of, me. Until I graduated from high school, which is when I first started, I don't know, questioning, maybe this isn't for me, I don't know. So I decided to start study theoretical physics, which was well, one cannot do anything more stupid than that, because I was so lazy. I didn't basically, all the things I read were about music, were about art, were about, photography, were about sculpting, painting, whatnot. And then for some, I don't know what brain fart went through my skull. Then I decided, hey, this would probably be a good idea. And after 3 or 4 lectures given by a very gifted professor, I quite quickly realized that, okay, this is going to end badly, which is when I entered the second phase of my music life. And I ended up selling keyboards in a local music shop in Jyväskylä, Finland, which is probably back then, because there was a fine, general depression in Finland, and lots of people were unemployed and so forth. It was probably the worst choice ever. Nobody would buy anything, or if they would buy, they would be the cheapest shit there is. And I wasn't, let's say that there are approximately 6.5 billion better salesmen than me. And I just couldn't lie to the customers. I couldn't say about some cheap Casio, this is exactly what you need. This will bring the orchestra to your living room, because it didn't.
Yeah.
And I was about to be unemployed after a week because I kept telling the truth, which is when a guy came through a door into the shop, and he was looking for somebody to help him produce stuff in a studio. So we ended up discussing. I had no idea who he was. He was really, well, sounded like bright and really intelligent, and I immediately clicked with him. And later that day, I called quits when it comes to. I decided to, I took all my gear and took that to that guy's studio, and we started doing, studio work. I did keyboard programming and did sounds to his synths, and made a lot of sampling and helped doing arrangements and whatnot. I had lots of gear back then already. Everything I had ever earned during summer, working in a factory during the summer, every penny went to keyboards and synthesizers. And analog synthesizers back then, they were really cheap. You could buy, a container full of stuff with just, 5,000 Finnish marks or whatnot. I mean, less than 1,000 euro. And so I had lots of that, and one thing led to another. I planned that I would be a studio rat, but unfortunately, they dragged me on stage. That was a mistake, because I enjoyed playing live so much that I still do it every now and then. Although it's a funny thing, I'm an introvert. I'm a serious case of introvert. And despite that, I enjoy being on stage, but not alone. There has to be friends around, or otherwise it's not for me.
Yeah.
And well, that happened, and thing led to another, and we started producing more and more records, and somehow we became more or less like, I'm not saying we were so-called hit producers or anything fancy. Instead, we were like, we did meat and potatoes things, and we did that really quickly, and it sounded quite okay. But at some point, I felt that, okay, my partner was keen on maintaining that level, and I was keen on developing myself. So we eventually went different routes, different ways. He became a very famous voiceover artist, and I became composer and so forth. We are still friends. No tragedy, nothing like that. We had our own tracks to follow. And then at some point, Napster hit the world and basically brought everybody on their knees, because suddenly people noticed that, hey, we can get this for free. Why should we pay for it? Which means that when you used to have a budget for, let's say, a certain amount of euros for producing a single, side A and side B, and all of a sudden, with that amount of money, you had to produce a whole album or 10 tracks. It didn't make any sense, because the prices had hiked up, and all the extra musicians, they were more and more expensive and so forth. So I decided, okay, this is going to end badly. And once again, I started looking over the fence towards the greener grass, and I eventually started doing so-called cross-media products, and that led to me doing music concepts for and audio branding for different companies, and that led to me doing more and more, different kind of marketing jobs and things like that. And all of a sudden, a friend of mine asks if I would be interested in doing music for games. And I said, yeah. I knew Max Payne, and I'd been a gamer all my life. I've had all Commodore 64s, Amigas, and so forth, all the consoles. I think I have some 20, 30 in my garage at the moment.
I'll be over.
Like all the shit. And this friend of mine used to work at FutureMark, which owned or was owned by Remedy. I can't remember which way around it was. But anywho, they used to have Christmas parties and so forth. They, with the same company or two companies in the same room and so forth. So he then, after one Christmas party, told me that, hey, maybe somebody calls you next week. And I was like, yeah, sure. Yeah, let's see. And they did. And that was basically the beginning of, let's say, the third phase of my, what I would call a musical career.
Yeah.
And they required me to do music for a demo where a camera was flying over a valley and there was a river and everything, and it was beautiful scenery. And then the camera landed and there was a guy who stood out of a car and stood next to the car, sort of leaning to it and looked at the city across the pond. And that was Alan Wake. And that was basically, I think they used that video to sort of get money or get the publisher or whatnot. I don't know what happened, but I was later told that how I was able to catch the nuances of the flight with a cello, that was the reason why they chose me over, I guess there was some German and then somebody from the States doing music for that scene as well, but they probably chose me because of, well, I sort of, for some reason, it's always been easy for me to read the picture, especially moving picture. It's sort of, I hear sounds when I see that.
Yeah, I totally get it.
That's the.
That was the moment that changed everything for you.
Yes, basically. I used to sort of separate the sections quite drastically. Version 1.0 was me in Lahti studying. Version 2.0 was me starting to learn the studio and touring thing and doing pop music and songwriting and this and that. And this is now version 3. And I sort of feel that it's so important for me to develop the skills I have.
Yeah.
And that means that I'm sort of waiting for some new thoughts to appear in my head, and maybe at some point there will even be a version 4.0. I don't know, but I'm willing to say, I say this quite often, that if I die at 100 years old and I'm still the same as I'm now, that I probably have wasted all the energy and natural resources and whatnot, and everybody's time, including mine, and that would be not okay.
So, thinking on that, when you originally did Alan Wake, and all the DLC, etc., has that process that you used or went through with composing for the game, has that changed at all from 1 and 2? Or is it just kind of a resource?
It hasn't. I mean, somehow, I've always had this I see picture, I hear music thing, synesthesia. So some would say, and actually it is a form of synesthesia. And for me, for instance, certain chords have colors, and okay, let's not go there.
No, it's fine. No, I totally get you. I totally get you. I speak with Joe from The Flight quite a lot, and we share music together because we're very, very similar in a way that I hear music and it does other things to me. Like there's pieces of music that will instantly make me cry.
Yeah.
I can hear, I can feel the emotion in the notes. It's really strange to kind of explain, but I really get synesthesia. So yeah.
That's it sounds like that's form of it. Yeah, indeed. And that hasn't changed. But what has changed throughout the years is that when I usually sort of had doubts about my, like the quickness, of the reaction, or it's the intuition seemed to, I don't know, it seemed to work so quickly that I felt cheating even. And I so originally in the beginning, I forced myself doing a lot of versions of something in order to find what I really wanted. And then I realized that what I really want is the first thing I hear in my head when I see the picture. It took a while to sort of accept that.
Yeah.
And then I started developing and building on that. It's intuition leading to improvisation, and there comes the inspiration. And or then other way around, intuition, inspiration, improvisation. Let's put it this way. This is makes more sense. And but it's funny when you sort of feel everything and you hear the song in your head, like it's all done, it's there, it's all done. And I always think, I wish everybody could hear it right now. And then begins the
process.
I was about to say fucking process, but the insane amount of sitting down and yelling at the computer and yelling at the, things can go wrong, and you could basically have a beach ball on your screen if there is a plugin in your digital audio workstation which doesn't work or is buggy or whatnot. So a lot of swearing is thrown in throughout the process, but and it still feels a little bit like cheating, because I'm basically, I know that I've done something. Yeah, I know that I've done something in my head, and then the physical process of redoing it into real world version, it feels like I'm copying something. I'm stealing from somebody, from myself. And,
you're getting from here to there.
And that's what feels a little bit like cheating. But I'm getting over it little by little. And now when I did the final stages of Alan Wake 2 soundtrack, it didn't bother me anymore. And I enjoyed the whole, I don't know what's the exact word in English for vuoristorata, but you go to amusement park and you go into this train and into the track, and it goes like this. What's that thing called?
I'll have a think. But I must admit, I am playing Alan Wake 2 at the moment, and it's terrifying.
Yeah, I have to say that I tried playing it the other night, late at night.
Yeah.
And I have already forgotten all the frights. I've seen all the cinematics and I've seen the gameplay and everything. I know what's happening where.
Yeah, honestly.
It grabs you and takes you with it, and you forget. And then, oh, holy shit.
the bits that get me are the little tiny, like 1 and 2 second screams in black and white. Always come out of nowhere and always scare me to death.
Yeah, one thing that I did a few times was the scene where Nightingale wakes up at the morgue. He's dead and he doesn't have a heart, and all of a sudden he sits there and grabs somebody by their neck and throws around the room. And when that happened, and although I knew, okay, this is the moment, this is where it happens, and I had my headphones on, holy shit, that was that was really scary. I mean, the sound designer guys at Remedy, they are so insanely brilliant. And all the rain and all the wind in the trees.
Why would you
It,
play your own game with
what?
headphones on? You know, why would you play it with headphones on?
Uh, I don't trust my living room's acoustics. Let's put it. It's rather echoey.
Okay.
And my headphones, which I'm using, they are actually really good, and they transfer the 5.1, 7.1.4, 0.3.1415926 whatnot really well, and
Yeah.
they are like the sound quality is magnificent. So I trust my trusty old headphones
Yeah.
slightly more than my usual hi-fi
I have to
speakers.
admit, yeah, I have a pair of Bose Quiet Comfort too, and man, I love those. They go everywhere with me, everywhere.
Um, by the way, speaking of headphones, these that I'm wearing at the moment, Grado XR 325. I don't know how long I have had these, but if I'm doing music and I really need to know what's where in the sound field, and I'm not able to use speaker system, these are the only ones I really trust.
Okay.
I've had a pair. I
They
guess
look
this
nice.
was, but I think I bought my first pair right when they were available in Finland. So many decades ago. So, but the sound is absolutely,
Yeah.
it's bewitching, so to say.
Mhm. So with Alan Wake 2, how long did you actually spend on composing it and
I
doing
did.
other bits?
Oh, to be honest, there is a scene for which the music was done in 2004,
Hmm.
in August 2004.
Hmm.
I'll return to this slightly later. But when Alan Wake 1 was done, I started composing for a sequel in 2011.
Oh wow.
So, so first things for this one were done already in 2011. There are only two pieces that I did back then. But each time we tried to sort of wake from death,
Yeah.
I always did a few new tracks. So I've more or less composed, let's say, approximately a dozen tracks between 2011 and when the production finally began. Sorry. But the majority of the work concentrated in the past 3 years or so, I guess. I did something in 2019 already. I knew that it's going to be, we are going to do that.
Yes.
But 2020 was the first year when I really worked on that and that only. But now we get back to the 2004 August track. The piece that was done for the first Alan Wake as a demo, my
Yeah.
entrance demo. They never used that in Alan Wake 1. And it sort of kept,
Hearing.
yeah, it appeared every now and then, but there was never, how would I say, never just the right scene for that piece. And then I saw the first version of a cinematic where Alan Wake is, after all these monstrous events, he's basically himself, back to himself again, and he's driving a car to Bright Falls. And I knew immediately that we have to try if I could fit that in there. And I just opened the old sequence I had done in 2004 and replaced a lot of instruments, of course. All the plugins had changed, and all the sound libraries had turned into better versions of themselves. And so there was a huge renovation. I basically redid that, but the notes are what I used to put in back in 2004. And then I dragged the clip on my timeline and pressed play. almost brings tears to my eyes. But when the Alan Wake notes are played in that cinematic, they appear exactly. Oh, sorry.
No.
Holy shit. They appear exactly where Alan stood out of the car.
Yeah.
So I decided that, okay, this is the sign. We have to do this. And I kept my head through quite a few cinematic reviews because we were doing a horror game, and a lot of stuff needed to be much more tighter and dynamic, and they really had to emphasize the horror. They really had to bring in,
And they did.
chills. Yeah, they do.
Mhm.
But I sort of felt that if there's only slapping, it doesn't, it stops feeling like slapping. You have to caress a little bit. You have to hug the gamer once and then keep on slapping again. So good slap over
I have to
years.
admit that when I've been playing it, there's been pieces of music, and I've just literally been playing and just stopped because it was really beautiful, really, really beautiful.
But I felt it was such a good accident, so to speak.
Yeah.
I really had to, I felt like cheating, of course, because it felt so easy. But I don't know. If it works there and it fits there, why not use it there?
Yeah.
In other words.
So do you
Yep.
think that you're going to do some, obviously we in this industry, we've got loads of NDAs. Do you think you'll continue to work within the games industry for now?
I if it's only me, I'm if they ever do Alan Wake 3 or 4 or 510, I would love to be with them.
Yeah.
I sort of feel that there is so many things still left in my head because we have leftovers, lots of good, really good leftovers from Alan Wake 2, like you wouldn't believe. But we just didn't have the right spot for those.
Yeah. Well,
Let's
that's
say,
not to say that it's not going to happen in the future, because, as you said, you had that piece from 2004, and it's in a game that was released in 2023.
yeah, and of course, most likely there are going to be DLCs. So
Yeah.
obviously something like that is going to happen. So
Yeah.
I would like to use a few tricks in my sleeve for those. I don't know what Sam and the other guys have planned, but knowing what Sam can do, I guess we both know by now what is in what's inside his head. It's like a little bit like Scrooge McDuck diving into
Into the money. Yeah.
yeah, swimming among the coins. It's like it's a wonderland in his head. So I'm eagerly waiting what is going to happen next, because there are lots of different paths that we are able to walk with Alan Wake as an IP. Yeah, and especially knowing that, well, now that the Game Plus has just
Oh yes. Yeah.
I think it will be. Is it already like available, or?
Yeah, I think it came, or it's
Or was,
coming out on Monday or something, or
oh, okay. So
definitely
yeah,
around.
but that's going to open, let's say, quite a few routes and paths for people. I'm quite sure that they are they are quite astonished at the latest turns.
Yeah. So do you think now that Alan Wake 2 is out, you think it's time to rest a little for you?
Sorry?
Do you think it's time for you to rest a little?
No.
That was a trick question, to be fair.
I've tried vacationing, and it's not exactly. I can't cut out my brain.
No.
I can't silence my head.
And there's a lot of music inside.
Yeah, everywhere I go, I used to I go ears first.
Mm-hmm.
I hear stuff and I start thinking, okay, this could be usable, that could be usable. I have a field recorder in my car,
Mm-hmm.
just in case, because if I, refill at the gasoline stop and I hear something like something screeching or keeping interesting sound,
Mm-hmm.
grab my recorder and steal that sound. and because I'm constantly working, or it's not working. It's
No.
just that I'm so insanely interested in sound
Mm.
and music and stuff like that. It's I can't. It's a little bit like, why are you breathing? Well, because that's something I do. For me, music is like breathing.
Yeah. No, I totally get you. I totally get you. A long time ago, I was going to go into sound production, but then my dad was like, "No, do something sensible." So I ended up going to college
Mhm.
for a year doing business studies and dropping out. So
Mhm.
anyhow. So it's almost Christmas. So Merry Christmas to you and all of yours. I just want to say a massive thank you for spending the time today. It's been really, really a pleasure. And I know it's taken us a while to kind of, slot and get there, but we did.
Let's do part 2 at some point.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. That would be an absolute pleasure.
Hmm.
So yes, just say thank you, everybody. Hopefully we'll see you in the new year. That's the end of this week's show. Thank you.
Yep. See you.